I have a US relationship expert, Hellen Chen, here with us, and we're talking about communicating with our children, how to love them but not spoil them. And Hellen, as we said, we were talking about communicating with children. You know, it's okay to be a friend because a friend suggests that you are communicating openly with your child. That doesn't mean to say you're not offering advice as well. And of course, we were talking a lot about that. And then somebody quite rightly said, but how do you deal with a 2-year-old tantrum? You know, they're clearly thinking, how do I have a discussion with a 2-year-old? But it's interesting because you were saying, well, yeah, you know, 2 and below, well, around 2 is a really good time to start communicating and giving your children attention.
Yes, it's so important, you know, you don't thinking about they're so small, they understand nothing. I'm thinking that thought is really hurting children. They just cannot talk in the way like we adults because they didn't educate fully in the language yet. But basically, they are supposed to be treated like adults because they have an individual thought, they need a space, they need to be respected. So the most important for the children is you give them good intention and then you actually talking to them. The children behave very well. The why children cry is because they couldn't communicate. That's the only way. Even crying have many kinds. You know, they actually shows their explanation and then they shows their emotion. They actually communicate with you. So you know what they really want. And then they cry because they cannot really talk, not because they really want to cry. So I thinking it's very important for us as adults to understand the babies. If you give them enough attention and then you're really talking to them, children so behave, you know, they may never really mean. But if you want to order them and shouting them, or they started really getting mean. So you have to understand the children's pattern also.
Yeah, and I know, and you know, it is hard in the middle of a supermarket when quite frankly you're exhausted and it might be the 4th tantrum of the day. And of course we all want to try and be that perfect parent and put ourselves under a lot of pressure. But as you say, if we can just remember from their point of view, you know, can you imagine trying to talk to somebody in a different language and you're constantly being misunderstood? You'd be really frustrated. I can well imagine I'd probably have about 6 tantrums a day if people couldn't understand me. But also it's interesting because you were saying as parents, you know, we assume that we don't change and of course we change as well, particularly first versus 3rd child or 4th child or 2nd child. You know, the first one, we were kind of giggling in the break saying probably overdo it a bit with the first one.
Right.
By the 3rd one, you know, almost benign neglect in a good way. But it's interesting because your dynamics as a parent change as well.
Yes, the first one you always overdo because you're so careful, you're so nervous. You don't know how to do it, you know. And then the second one, you're more relaxed. And then the 3rd one, you almost like, oh, well, they just grow anyway, you know. And then because that, the first one, the second one, the 3rd one, they actually same parents, but then they have a different personality. But the parents, the pattern also changing. But this is not important about talking about how parents' pattern is, but it's important is about parents should understand kids need to be respected. Kids need to be pay attention. And if you really respect them and you parents themselves are high tone, that means you happy. You see, the most of things the children want is happy parents. So instead of a mom crying or shouting, you know, they're making kids very nervous. So if parents themselves are very happy and then talking to children and be their friend and more like a little bit not so serious, children grow up very, very well. You know, you just like give them always what you want them to do and what's happening now. So I think in parents is very important. They really grow up themselves also with the children, and then they learn and then they try to understand children instead of a bad emotion, because that was the worst of the education is when you shout, that didn't mean anything in communication at all. It's even not category in the communication. So if you're really nice to children and you're talking to them, children really, really follow you. They really understand most of things, and then they're very thoughtful. So I suggest parents grow up themselves and then be happy and then enjoy just children to be in a time with the baby, and I'm thinking everybody in the family would really behave, and you can be a happy mom.
Yeah, and I suppose we all know that when we've lost it, that we've really lost the battle. You know, whether it be in the workplace or you know, at home, that everybody knows that when the voices rise, that really they've lost the battle, and it shouldn't have really got to that point. And
right.
You know, you see it in supermarkets, and you kind of feel sorry for the parents, but it's still not nice. So as you say, yes, we as parents need to grow up a bit as well, take that time out for 5 seconds and regroup and come back again. And it also strikes me that, clearly when you're a psychologist, you get years of training to get rid of all your old sort of preconceptions, because everybody has them and they're not all necessarily bad. But one of those preconceptions we have is about boys' behavior versus girls as well. and so we make certain allowances or not dependent on the sex of the child. So that can also maybe be a bit of a confusing message to children.
Yes, it's like, sometimes the parents keep going, want to have the daughter, or like they just wanted to so spoil their boys, and because they only have one, or it's only one boy at home or only one girl at home, and the father's mother, because there's six things. And the main thing is come from parents is a wrong idea about what it should be. You see, and the way I say wrong idea is not like because right and wrong, quote unquote, it's because the mom has this idea what standard should be, and that was the really dangerous for children. They should let them be what they want to be. No such things about girls should be this way and boys should be that way. And this all standard come from mom, and they're making children has no space, no freedom, and then they be educated into, and which was not their natural personality, and that was not good. But we cannot avoid that is because mom so love the son, or father so spoil the daughter, and that kind of things, making the girls or boys grow up in a certain way, which was also influence their future relationship in their family and when they fall in love. So I would suggest the parents, taking easy and let children be the way they want to be, and try to be their friend. That was the best way, and always talk about it, and people will adjust themselves in the right way for best for themselves, and that was the natural and the best for the education.
Yeah, and I know that you're a relationship specialist as well when it comes to marriage, and one that strikes me is I know it happens probably early on and maybe to a certain extent, is different messages from mum or dad. I mean, kids will always try mum or dad first, and then if they don't get the right solution, they'll just pop over to the other one and say, is it still a no then? And sometimes you can get stress in a relationship with a child and within a relationship as children try to do that tactic, which is normal for them.
Yes, it's very normal. And I think the important thing is for parents to set up the very good marriage for the children to learn. You have to see the parents love each other. That's very important. Even include the kissing and hugging. If the parents do that, children is very naturally learn how to do it. But if the parents are very stiff, children will never know how to do that. And then also, when you love the children, you let them be themselves, and you encourage them to be with the opposite sex, and then enjoy themselves, express themselves, know themselves. I think more important is you find yourself instead of find the perfect one for you to be matching. It's more important is like who you are, what you want to be, and what kind of person you are, and what is your ability to love another person. That's more important than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to get your own house in order first. Now, we've only got a couple of minutes left, but I kind of talked about, if you've disconnected slightly with your teenager, because you have to give them maybe more space to find themselves. They're going through an evolution, and your relationship is maybe going through an evolution. And I know a lot of parents have exam stress on top of that as well at the moment. So how do they keep the channels open with communicating with their children at that point? Clearly the work has to be put in before. It's not a magic formula now. But if they've kind of lost their way a bit and they want to reconnect to what they had, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same relationship, but how do they reconnect?
Easy for we to understand the teenager. The first things we should know about the past 10 years. Teenager is not like from today they are teenager. Teenager is because the past 10 years, and then they have a wrong thing, or they not be treated, and then build up, and it comes up, become a teenager. So the best thing is you always let them help, you let them work. You should teaching the children to produce, how to have fun, to talk. People need to learn to enjoy communication. Person need to learn how to help, to enjoy, to producing something. So when teenager, if they can work, if they have their own interest, if they know somebody to trust, and then they know somebody trust them, they will not become very difficult. But if you don't trust them, and then you don't, you ignore them as a children since a baby, and then they become built up like, oh, nobody understand me, like what you say, like no, every day nobody understand me, then you will make them really difficult to be with you because they don't trust you, and then they not be trust. So the most important is you let them help you, and then you let them help themselves. It's like a working, even like a housework, wash dishes and, do the laundry, clean the house. It's very important always let them do that. And if you always make them do this after 10 years, in the teenager, they will become very thoughtful. They will actually enjoy become your friend. It's just the reason teenager become difficult is because past 10 years, they are really spoiled.
Yeah.
And then they build up, and then now it's too late, But the most important, if it happens, you should still stay this communication. And the most important still, you pay attention to the children. You always talking to the children when they need you. Pay the attention instead of shouting them. Don't give them a big talk and yell them, and then they will just shut off. They don't talk to you anymore. So it's more important for parents to really still be a friend always, and then there were children talking to you.
Exactly. So if in doubt, and everybody's pushed at certain times, to count to that proverbial 10, come back, and if not then maybe later on in the day have a more productive discussion, even if it's just touching base like you're okay.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Helen. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And today we've had in the studio with us Hellen Chen, a US relationship expert, talking about children, how to love them and not spoil them, and also how to cultivate our children so they can operate out in the world thereafter with skill and courtesy and respect to others. Well, thank you very much for joining us today on Education Matters.